Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this is something you'd be interested in, then why not subscribe? Today I had another look at Sunseed / Sunavalon because they a while ago at they got a new card, and I finally wanted to actually revisit them and see if I could make a more competitive variant with trying to stay around the kind of super rares and ultra rares that I used before. I have made a few changes. It's a bit more expensive than it was before, especially the extra deck, and I have made a few tweaks and stuff. And I will put some other channels into my description if you want to see like a very good deck profile, like a most competitive, most expensive one, because a lot of people have been asking how that would look like, and I don't want to make them as well. I feel like there's probably people that have done a better job than me at that, so I will give them a wee shout out, and you can check them out to see how that works. Starting off with the ratios, some of this might look a bit odd, especially to the people that already know a good Sunavalon kind of deck profile would look like. And this is, for example, stuff like Sunvine Sowing. You usually want to only run at 2 because this card is mainly for searching anyway, and you can only activate it once per turn anyway, and you kind of want to activate it after you search it because this starts your mega combo, and anything else is a bit sad. And since this is a budget deck profile, the ways of getting into your main play starter, which is Sunseed Genius Loci, are limited. And this is one card that at least starts your plays then, in some sense, because otherwise you would be a bit screwed if you don't have any other ways of getting that onto the field. So this, running it at 3, if you don't start with any other way of getting into Loci, this at least does stuff, and you can still create a board, I'd say. If not, then usually the normal good decks rely on having a massive shitload of hand traps in your hand and just hoping your opponent does nothing till you find a card that actually goes into Loci, and yeah, that can be a bit problematic. Talking about the other cards that get Loci out are Lone Fire Blossom. I run it at 2, well, budget deck wise, that makes sense, and I also wanted to run at least 2 Painful Decision. 3 is probably a bit too much because it can clog your hand up, and if you draw Painful Decision and 2 Loci, this card is actually dead. So I feel like it's not as good, but it is better than Lone Fire Blossom in some other ways, and this other way is the fact that if you normal summon Lone Fire Blossom, want to go into Loci, Lone Fire gets ashed and whatnots, then you just end your turn, basically. That's usually around about it, because you cannot do much unless you have the Rikka kind of engine to start off to at least end on something that does stuff. So I feel like, yeah, I sometimes prefer a Painful Decision because it doesn't completely stop your plays. You still have ways to do stuff. Sometimes it can even bait an Ash Blossom from your opponent. So in general, I prefer this card. Another card that basically does the same and I really like in this deck is Unexpected Die, because you don't have to use your normal summon, so you can still do other kinds of plays afterwards. And the same would be kind of 1 for 1. Obviously ultra rare, so I did not want to include this in this deck profile as I did the last time, because the last time this deck was a bit cheaper. But since we have enough ways of getting into Loci now for like a somewhat cheapish deck, I decided to bench this card for the time being. But obviously it's quite good. It starts your Rikka plays, it starts your Sunseed plays, Sunavalon plays. So if you happen to have 1 for 1, you can easily play this card for any of the other extenders. Then you can cut 1 Sunvine Sowing, for example, would still work. You run quite a fair amount of monsters, and some of them actually profit from being in the graveyard, so that's also not too bad. They have a lot of cards that you can cut here and there to actually do stuff, and those are the main cards that get out your play starters. You obviously have the Sunvine Sowing as well, but that's not what you want to use it for. But gladly you have another card in your deck that actually is searchable off of your Link monster, so you can still do stuff. It's just not as good. And talking about the cards in general, we run obviously triple Sunseed Genius Loci, because this card is still the massive play maker of this deck. 1 Spore, it's just a good plant extender. If you discard it and stuff, it does things. 1 Aromage Laurel, because this card is actually quite important in this deck now, because it gains your life points, and with this you can do some shenanigans with Aroma Seraphic Jasmine. We run triple Rikka Petal at this point. You technically can cut this card to 2 or to 1 if you want. If you want to have 3 Rikka Glamour, for example, then you can actually put this card to 1 and just run triple Rikka Glamour. Rikka Glamour, by the way, a card you have to really watch. You could, this card text can be misunderstood. So you can attribute a plant monster, you can add one Rikka monster from your deck to your hand, then if you attribute it to a monster when you activate this card, add one plant monster with the same origin name as that Rikka monster, but a different name. So it's not the same level of the monster that you tribute, it's the same level of the monster that you search. So this cuts off quite a lot of, I would say, good plays in this deck. But also, if you search, for some reason, if you search Rikka Petal and not one of the other Rikkas that actually does stuff, you can add stuff like Sunseed Shadow to your hand, which is a card that I know most people don't run, and it's probably better if you just run hand traps instead. But this card at 2 or even 3, you could cut technically the other kind of stuff for this specific one. This card can actually do stuff that certain other cards can't. And if you happen, well, you always want to have one Sunseed Genius Loci on your field anyway, so this card is just another addition to what you already want to achieve. And then you just summon this card, and even if then your plays get ashed with your link monster and you cannot get into sowing, or sowing gets ashed, then you still have a way, if this card is on board, to go into some plays, because this, first of all, it's another body on board, which is quite important. Second of all, this card actually has a somewhat neat effect where you can turn one of these on your field into 2 of them on the field. So that can be quite nice, because it's basically a free link 2 then. So I feel Sunseed Shadow does deserve its place in this specific deck profile, and also because I kind of want to play more-ish purer version of Sunseed's Sunavalon, because that's kind of what this channel is also for, not always just splashing hand traps into anything, but also having some sort of archetypal play that maybe other forms of the deck won't have. We run a double Sunseed Twin. You do not want to run this card at 1, because if you draw it, you're in a bit of a trouble, because this is the card you actually want to be summoning of Sunvine Sowing, because this card then enables some crazy lot of combos, because you have Dryas that triggers off of the effect of Twin, because Twin, or not because of Twin, of Sowing, because Sowing you take 1000 damage, then you have Twin, then this card can target one of your loci in the graveyard that you used already to summon this one back, and so on. So you have quite a lot of stuff that you can do, and basically with one loci you already end on like possible link 4 and even more, because you can then continue to go into combos, which include Sunvine Healer and include the double Jasmine. And there's so many combo videos, just look it up on YouTube. If I take a bit longer to upload some replays as usual, then you can find that there, and there's quite a lot of stuff. Some people use Melias for these combos, which I decided not to include because this is another ultra rare and you can get away without playing it, so it's not a necessary card in this deck. It's a good card, don't get me wrong, at 1 or even 2 it's a very good card, but I'm trying obviously to keep it as cheap as possible, and this card did not make the cut this time, because I felt like if I keep 1 for 1 out, if I keep this out, we can go for the way stronger combo, which is double Aroma Seraphy Jasmine, and this is a card you want to be picking up for basically any plant-based deck anyway at one point, so I decided to include that instead of the other 2, which has been working out fairly decent. Double Lone Fire Blossom for getting basically anything. You can get into this card with Aroma Seraphy Jasmine. Even 1 sometimes is enough if you feel like you don't want to go for the double combo, or you only have 1 Jasmine and you want to try it out like this, then you can still do enough with this. You can always go into Lone Fire Blossom, then special summon any monster from your deck, which is a bit nonsense because you can just summon the monster that you actually want to be summoning off of Jasmine. But yeah, it is what it is. You do it the way you want it to. It's yeah, you can cycle through your deck and then I guess draw more important cards during the next turns. 1 Ash Blossom because it's a free card, and yeah, hand traps are good, and this is what this should symbolize. 1 Rose Girl, you also want to be searching this one for your combo because this can special summon itself from your hand, and there are some synchro plays you can do with this. You can go into some variant that gets Sweet Magiarm out because this card is quite nice, and you have like stuff like Lone Fire Blossom as well, who's also level 3, and then in theory you can go into level 6 synchros, and level 6 synchros are fun because this card then searches Blessed Winds, and you can do quite a lot of stuff if you like the whole Romage kind of thing. So there's that, and obviously you can go into one of the cheaper synchros that isn't completely terrible as Imperialis. You can do this with Rose Girl and any level 4, which that being said, you only run 1, I think, which is a card weight, but it's theoretically possible, so you could be doing this, and yeah, it's okay. It's not terrible, and this card actually does stuff. You can special summon some cards back, and this card's attack is okay. Not great, but it's not terrible for not like a rare card. in general. We run the Rikka Fairy because this card can be special summoned off of so many different cards. You can search it off of Rikka Petal, you can special summon it off of Lone Fire Blossom, you can special summon it off of Roma, Seraphy, Jasmine. So many ways to go into this. Then you can search either Rikka Glamour if you want to go for combos with Snowdrop, which can be quite nice, especially if you have Lone Fire Blossom in your hand, which you could have searched as well with Jasmine if you want to. And you can do the whole combo with search like Snowdrop instantly, and so on and so on and so on. Obviously you can search Rikka Sheet. This card is quite nice, especially if you already happen to have one Glamour, or if you already happen to have like all your combo pieces that you need, then that is fine. And yeah, this card in general is quite nice. Fairy, we do run the 2 level 6s. The problem with this is if you search this card or this card with Rikka Glamour and you tribute a plant monster, then you can search Fairy Archer, but you cannot search Snowdrop the Rikka Fairy and Fairy Archer at the same time. So this is a bit problematic, because without Snowdrop you cannot summon this card out of your hand, which is a bit problematic. And if you can't summon it out of your hand, then what are you going to do with it in your hand? Which, you know, that's kind of it. You could discard it and then summon it from the graveyard with Monster Reborn. There's obviously stuff we can do it with, but usually the combos work out the way that it is fine. But also with Glamour, you don't have to necessarily tribute stuff. If you just want to have Snowdrop, then that also works. But also if you search Petal, you can search Sunseed Shadow and Sunseed Genius Loci. Do not underestimate this. This is theoretically a way how you can search it. That's why I kind of like plant monsters that can special summon themselves without anything, like 1-for-1 go into the Rikka thing, and then you can do other kind of stuff. So that works as well if you want to. Then you still have your normal summon. For anything else, the Rikka is a card it's okay. The card is good because you can summon it from your graveyard, banish it when it leaves the field, but you kind of want to go into the rank 6 anyway with it. So technically you can use the effect at least twice. So that is nice if a plant monster is tributed, which there's so many cards that do this. So this card should be paying off most of the time. The attack boost effect isn't too bad either. And Snowdrop, you could run it at 3 if you like, a lot of people do. Then you have more chances of summoning this card and any other card that's stuck in your hand onto the field, which is very important a lot of the time. One Monster Reborn Extender can be helpful. Unexpected Die, already talked about these cards. Already talked about this card, Sunvine Shrine, a card that you can search with the link 1 as well, which is somewhat okay. Plus, something that you might not know is you can, in theory, use Sunavalon Andreas twice per turn. You can actually search 2 cards if you happen to manage to like get one Loci on the board again, and also if you link stuff off before, so your extra monster zone is free again, which you can do quite easily with, for example, your Bengal Lancer. But most of the time for this kind of combo, to use it again, you would want to use Sunavalon Melias at least, because this card makes it a bit easier to pull it off, to be searching twice, which is why a lot of people also would be running this card, I think, but also because this is a crazy extender and frees up your extra monster zone as well. Forbidden Chalice, hand traps are better, Infinite Impermanence is better. This card is just in here because of budget reasons. Rikka Sheet, somewhat okay disruption. You don't even get to keep the monster even if you tribute a plant monster, which is a bit sad, and it doesn't negate the effect, it just makes it so your opponent can't activate it, which I think the only time that has really helped me so far is against Deskbot 004. So yeah, it does stuff sometimes. Problem with this deck is stuff like Raigeki actually hits hard, so Solemn Judgment and Double Polynosis is something that I decided to run. Bumped this card up actually because it worked better than I thought, especially with the Rikka package, because this card, tributing one of your monsters, triggers stuff like Kanzashi, which is quite nice. So you can actually get stuff from your graveyard. Most of the time you kind of want to use it from your opponent's graveyard, especially with DP and things being around. Maybe not as much anymore, but technically could still be around. So yeah, that is something. And this card is easily searchable, blanket negate, and boosts all of your link 4 monsters, link 4 plant monsters up. So it even works on Bengal Lancer, which makes this card incredibly strong from time to time. So there is that. I already talked about the level 7. Kanzashi is quite easy to make, so this is a card we want to be running. Other cards to consider if you have them, obviously Teardrop the Rikka Queen is very, very nice in combination with Snowdrop, because Snowdrop can just make all of your monsters level 8, and then you can easily go into this one. And this one is a quick effect if this card has a plant monster as a material, which it will always have, so it's a very, very good disruption. So if you want to run this card, definitely do so. You could do some kind of shenanigans with other Rikka kind of stuff. So the level 4 is actually not too bad. You have some other level 4s that you could be running at one-offs, and the deck would work more as a Rikka specific version as well if you wanted to, so you could go for this as well. Another card to consider is Sunvine Crossbreed. It's not very good. It works maybe in a Rikka kind of way because it tributes stuff, link monsters have been said, but maybe other effects have been triggered by this. If the effects were negated by the monster that you summon back, this card would be actually quite nice, but like this, it's not all that useful, so I wouldn't necessarily play it. Then triple Sunavalon. This card makes a lot of sense, I feel, at 3, because you need so many. Like with your standard combo you already need 2, so having another one can be not too bad. Sunvine Healer, a very, very nice card, also needed for the combo. That is basically why you run it. It works with Laurel, it works with the whole Aroma Seraphy kind of stuff, so you definitely want to be running this at 3. One Thrasher you could run 2, but I felt like the deck does enough these days, so you don't actually need 2 Thrashers. You technically could get away with running none, but I prefer actually running one of them because this card is quite nice attack wise, and it helps you with your attack boost from Sunavalon Bloom, so I would definitely run one Thrasher. But this card has, I feel like, gotten significantly less good if you don't get into Sunvine Shrine, because when you go first you don't really want to summon this card, and when you go second you need to find a way to get Loci back out of the graveyard, and that used to be Shrine, but now if you don't have Shrine anymore on board, it's a bit more difficult. So I feel like one Thrasher is definitely fine. Double Jasmine because this card is good. Double Dryadis because this card works in the combination with Shadow. You could cut this whole engine, you could cut this for Melias, and technically even for Daphne this card isn't too bad because it actually recycles stuff, which can be helpful. Usually not too good, but it can be. And you could run Gardener as well if you want. You could run one of them, because sometimes if you happen to have Andreas up, which isn't too hard to do, then you can, if your opponent attacks you and you get damage, or if you use effects of, for example, like Bangalancer, because that damages you, then you can special summon one Gardener from the extra deck into the zone. So that works. Not too good, but it's doable, I guess. One of the Link 4 Sunavalons, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. This card is very strong. You can pop stuff, also tributes, so it works again with the whole Rikka kind of stuff, so it triggers that. And yeah, it creates a blanket negate by being able to search Sunavalon Bloom, and Bangalancer is a card that is very good, bounces stuff, and yeah, it takes you, it makes you take damage, which is technically not good, but for some reason Sunavalon that is actually good, so I quite like this card as well. Other cards to consider, obviously Called by the Grave, because this card dies to Ash Blossom most of the time. So I've already talked about most of these cards here. Obviously Maxi is a great card, played as long as it's legal, and it might be forever. Mordell is a card that extends your plays basically, because it searches and puts a body on board like this, so it's not too bad as well. There's some cards that you can play in the extra deck. I think there's a if you go the whole Rikka route, you can with this card go into, I think, a rank 9 plant monster if I'm not mistaken. There's some high level plant monsters that are quite good, but that would be something for the Rikka deck profile, if anything. Hope you enjoyed the deck profile. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.